Hello, everybody. Welcome to our rounds for April the 25th. Where has the winter gone, let alone half of April? Today, we have Dr. Crampton presenting. He is a family physician practicing at Toronto Western Family Health Team and is a researcher with expertise in digital health and AI in primary care. He has a master's in health informatics at the University of Toronto, and he co-founded and is now CEO of a budding successful startup based in Toronto. Now, correct me if I say this wrong, Mutual Health?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you. His company is commercializing his academic research. He and his team created a state-of-the-art AI medical scribe tool called AutoScribe. Since launch last April, it has been used by over 350 healthcare providers across Canada. He is passionate about formulating the ethical framework for the collection of continuous link health data that will power the AI algorithms of the future. And he's happy to have you put any questions in the chat or wait till the end. Pass it over.
Hi, everyone. Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. Today, I'm going to be talking about sort of the state of AI in general in healthcare and sort of, where we're at, where we're going, and some of the exciting opportunities. So that should be 2024, but that's all good. Okay. So just to start off, I do have some disclosures. As was noted by Kathy, I am the CEO of a commercial startup, Mutual Health. And to present today, I have been receiving an honorarium from the Parry Sound Education Group. All right, so let's jump in. I've always been interested in technology. I went through undergrad and medical school in the early 2010s. And when I got into healthcare, it sort of like dawned on me how it's a bit of a conundrum in that, healthcare is some of the most advanced technology available in society, but some of the tools seemed really behind the consumer world. And I was just wondering if that was affecting patient care. This is the EMR interface, one of them that I encountered, and it's sort of like when you see this for the first time without understanding what it is, it's very bleary eyeing. It's you're not sure what you're looking at, and how could this be like, this user interface affecting patient care? So I really that triggered in me a curiosity to learn more. And obviously compared to the consumer world, which we're all familiar with, about how a lot of these AI tools are powering these devices now. So during that time, my journey started by doing a scoping review of how computers in general and electronic medical records in particular in the clinical encounter affect patient-physician-clinician communication. And there were certainly significant effects, both positive and negative. So that sort of set me on the journey of how can we improve the negative. So now today I'm a clinician researcher at the Toronto Western Family Health Team with a Master's of Health Informatics. I practice clinically and do a lot of research, particularly in digital health. And I've begun commercializing my research in this startup that I described. So it's an exciting combination of career that I have. All right, so I think everyone's familiar about what kind of challenges we're experiencing. Even before the pandemic, there was a lot of strain on our healthcare system, but coming out of the pandemic, it's even more so. So how are we going to, try to make the healthcare system as best as it could be, given the constraints that we're living in? What's going to come to the rescue, if anything? Money doesn't grow on trees, as we know. So I wouldn't bet on a huge revolution from, our payers. The electronic medical records on their own and sort of advances in them have had pros and cons to them. I think legibility being a big pro, but obviously the admin tasks have been downloaded at us because it's easier in a digital way to do that. So I wouldn't count on, just digitization to help us. But I am convinced that AI and the current use cases and the future use cases will be something that will maybe not completely solve everything, but certainly be one of the tools in our toolkit to help solve the crisis. So I think many of you are familiar with like the goals of a health system. Involves a quadruple aim, often now called a quintuple aim, which is trying to optimize for patient experience, population health, reducing costs, and caring for the care team. The fifth one in the quintuple aim is about ensuring equity of process and care. So with the right enablers in place, we could develop and implement a thoughtful AI regulation to enable AI to really help with a lot of the challenges in healthcare. So at a high level, it's nice to have like a long-term goal, feel motivated and inspired by working towards that goal. Because right now, obviously, our focus is our healthcare system is institution focused, where we're always reactive to illness and legacy processes, one size fits all, etc. But can we be more proactive and predictive and individualized with continuous service, both inside and outside the institution, with really patients at the core of driving this and have it outcomes based. And so the idea is, can AI in this process be our assistants? And the key here, not our replacements, to augment the clinical activity. Here's some potential use cases. Optimizing management of patient flow through the health system. Alerting very upstream in a patient's, health journey if they're going to be declining, so we can intervene as early as possible. Synthesizing real-world research about the next evidence-based care step in the personalized care of an individual patient. Using like advanced imaging as decision support to ensure diagnostic accuracy, and eliminating administrative tasks in our EMR so we can focus on patient care using our clinical judgment. So the interesting point is that all these use cases do actually exist, but how do we tie them together, deploy them at scale, ensure the value of the innovations to do the upfront investment? So I'm just listing on the right here certain examples of these implementations of these use cases in different health systems in North America, but they're haphazard in terms of their deployment. Certain health systems have more than others. So how do we sort of get these deployed across healthcare, including in primary care? So just to go over about a bit what AI is. So regular software involves these three key components. So data is like individual content. You can think of like fixed objects. Just really, that's what's going on in the computer, is like the representation of the ones and zeros that you may have heard about. And then what happens on those objects, how we move them around. Digital information is just basically the combination of all that data. And typical software is based on programs that are built on what's called logic algorithms. So a lot, you may have heard of like the if-then statements. So it's a lot of that goes into building a program that has very fixed rules. And this is what's been the domain of traditional computer science or explicit programming. AI differentiates in that we're taking advantage of certain critical mathematical tools. So just for interest, these statistical tools often are classification based and probabilistic, optimization, heuristics. What's been very exciting for the advancement of the accuracy is what's called machine learning. So that's what's really powering under the hood, and deep learning is just a very sophisticated version of machine learning. And deep learning leverages what's called artificial neural networks, which is basically replicating the human brain, how neurons are connected and how electrical signals are feeding forward and backward within that network to come out to a desired outcome. So AI can accomplish tasks that traditional software cannot because of all this prediction activity that's going on, and because you can't predict everything with an if-then statement, right? So it can simulate human cognition and various various executive functions that typical software can't. So this is a nice little, visual about how to think of the field. Artificial intelligence is just this catch-all term for accomplishing tasks that usually only human intelligence could normally do. Machine learning is the key sort of tool that's being used currently to enable that. And deep learning is our most advanced version of that. That's what's yielding such high accuracy right now. And it's the brain-like algorithms that I talked about. All right, so now what's the newfangled thing on the block is what's called generative AI. So you may have heard of the chat GPT. So GPT stands for generative pre-training transformer, or you could just say transformers for short. And it's a type of machine learning model architecture. And, I won't get into too much details here, but essentially it's the uniqueness about it is that it's really been honing in on how complex data sets all link together. So whether that's text or the pixels in an image, these models have been trained on huge amounts of data to enable it to reference when it sees some new data, how to predict what the next data would be. And yeah, this is what this point shows. All right. So I didn't want to get too much into the technical about AI, but just some background is important to understand how it works. I like this paper because it's sort of summarizing the key areas of opportunity for where AI can start to make differences. So in diagnostic assistance and clinical decision making, advanced medical advice and triage, risk prediction, intervention, paneling and resourcing, digital health coaching, population health management, device integration, practice management, and obviously chart review and documentation is where I am excited just to highlight some exciting examples of this. This one, uses machine learning to try and minimize the inequity of looking at lesions that are on darker skin, because we know that diagnostic inaccuracy increases with that, which is unfortunate from a equitable perspective. It can be used to predict glycemic responses. It can be used to review all the data in EMR and know where some opportunities of intervention may be. And here in Toronto, actually, Unity Health is using a forecasting tool to know exactly, based on the weather or events that are happening locally, how much extra staff to staff in the hospital. And as I mentioned, charting is where I like to focus my energy. But other things that are really exciting is these virtual bots, trying to optimize flow management and triage, form completion and coding of billing, quality improvement use cases. So, structuring of content in EMRs, automated reporting to key bodies like ministries of health. And then maybe even in the future, research network databases linked so that we can find patients who have a constellation of symptoms that a researcher is looking for to help with their research. All right, so let's get to charting, the fun stuff that I'm working on. So just to highlight again, AI is sort of working on any kind of data, but particularly the data I'm interested in is language or text. So natural language processing is the area that sort of encompasses computer science and linguistics. And right now, the most powerful natural language processing is the AI-powered one. Originally, these were developed for complex patterns and textual data using sort of, early rudimentary machine learning methods. But then, as we've advanced, as the technology has matured, we've gotten so good at with the technology that we now have the transformer-based versions of applied to language, and we may have heard the term large language model. Again, it's all these different neural networks that I mentioned earlier, working in tandem to maximize accuracy. Really, if you can remember your earlier math in your lives, is all about representation as vectors, the words and the raw characters. And so that's what's going on under the hood with these complex statistical vector mathematics, and that's why it's so impressive in terms of the accuracy. There is a bit of a what's called the black box effect, is that the math is so complicated that human to review the the outputs sometimes is not a simple task, but we're getting better at the interpretability of the math with time. All right. Just to let our vision is to really think about a health system where we're rebalancing large language models that were trained on the data in a way that starts to make more equitable representations of the data. So how do we as a health system enable that collection of that data so marginalized, we're not perpetuating AI generated predictions that are based on old data that did not have representation from key marginalized groups. So that's where the exciting part comes in, how the private and public sector can interface to enable that to happen. Because the more high quality data that's equitable and personalized, the more the accuracy of the outputs, and it's a positive feedback loop to get at that optimal representation of data and then optimal AI outputs. So let's pivot a little bit to what I'm focused on specifically at my company, which is the writing notes, as many of you have experienced and many of you have heard of AI scribes in general. But the reason behind is that there's a huge administrative burden in society. So there's been researchers that showed on the ref that we're spending clinicians up to 50% of our time on desk work. But we really want to rebalance that to what we went into, healthcare and medicine to begin with, to direct patient care and, the joy of diagnostics and therapeutic management. So I, went on this journey. Originally, I, started a research project to see if the AI was good enough to start understanding dialogue between clinicians and patients. And that's was with my colleague here, Serena Jubley. And then we realized it did work. We published some papers on the accuracy. So we decided let's spin this off into a startup to get some real value in the real world. And that's when we brought in our leading software engineer. And we've launched AutoScribe about a year ago, and so we now have lots of doctors and clinicians using it, using state-of-the-art AI models, and we're a team of 10 and growing rapidly. So this is AutoScribe, a doctor's digital scribe assistant powered by AI. I think in the intro you said 350. We're at over 500 now, so lots of unique clinicians getting value out of it right now. But essentially the way it works is there's a microphone in the exam room and the clinician and patient are conversing. And in real time, a note is being generated for that clinician. Our default one is a SOAP note, for instance. Clinician is tasked with reviewing and editing. And then we have some EMR integration. So if we're integrated, the EMR can automatically insert back into it. And what's unique about our system is that we learn from those edits, so it personalizes over time, if desired. Sometimes there's a privacy maximized version where clinicians don't want us to retain those edit data, so we don't. But we can do it if they like. So what does that lead to? You could see in this photo, instead of the doctor half focused on the computer screen and the keyboard, they could have their full attention on the patient because it's, the microphone on the table there is listening to the conversation, and the clinician trusts that everything will be retained. So that leads to engaged experiences, efficient, cost-effective encounters, reduced patient wait times, and reduced administrative burden. So just to clarify, AI scribes are not dictation tools. Many of you are probably familiar with Dragon, for instance, which is verbally saying exactly what you say into the microphone. The difference being that in this case, the AI-powered natural language processing interprets the clinician-patient conversation to predict the medical note. Because it's obviously there's a step there involved that's not direct dictation. And these products offer a relief for, some of you may have tried human scribes, not as popular in Canada as elsewhere, but human scribes obviously have to pay extra labor for an assistant to write the notes and carry out the EMR tasks. That's high cost of labor there, but AI is much more significantly lower cost. So you get a lot of the value of a human scribe using an AI-powered software. So, when we think about where we stand here, doctors writing their own notes, obviously it's time consuming and the administrative burden. Physician assistants, have actually gone to school to do some clinical effort. We see them quite a bit in emergency departments, for instance. But that in primary care, in hiring at the salary that they have is not viable. Human scribes in some case can be, but most of the time it's not. So that's why tools like AutoScribe and other AI scribe tools really change the game in terms of what's viable. So with AutoScribe, notes are generated in seconds compared to the amount of time it takes to write a note manually. If you want to sign up, it's easy because it's you just go to our website or mobile friendly with tiered flexible pricing model. We integrate with different EMRs, and we have supported change management. This is just our version of how we approach the initiation of it. But there's different AI scribes on the market who provide different opportunities there. And one of our clients found that it's been enormously helpful in her administrative work to catch up on her charting. So just to go over some of the accuracy metrics. So with that transformer technology I was mentioning earlier, it's become very accurate most of the time. So like 90+% of the time. There's starting to become more and more research coming out about these accuracy metrics. We're doing some ourselves. Here's the one from a study from last year, looking at a tool that was used in the US. But you can see we're seeing these exact same metrics in our current research, where time with patient is optimized, time spent after hours documenting significantly reduced by 70%, and just the satisfaction with the job, significant improvement with documentation time savings, and other quality of notes, etc. Satisfaction with the patient interactions. So thinking about AI scribe, and we'll do a demo shortly, which are always fun to do. But just to go over what is usually required. So obviously a computer, or you can you actually use your mobile phone if you'd like, and just go from room to room with that. A microphone attached to the computer, and ideally a conferencing one so that it captures the voices coming from different directions, and a reliable internet connection. Obviously, legal privacy and security is really important. This is a very hot area. To make sure that compliance is in place is extremely paramount. So in Ontario, we have the legislation for managing of personal health information. The legislation is called BHIPAA, but there's also the Canadian version and the American version, etc. So how do you ensure compliance with that? Is that the vendor has to prove that they've gone through the appropriate processes for privacy and security, that they are in compliance, and then also showing proof of insurance in the worst case scenario that a breach can be addressed. Whenever you're thinking about an AI scribe, make sure that you are able to think about these things, or at least have staff or people you can reach out to, legal or other management teams that can help evaluate the appropriateness. Tends to be that like hospitals and large clinic networks have that kind of staff in-house. So, Ontario MD is a good resource if you're in a small practice, to ensure the software you've selected is appropriate. Patient consent is a very important one. Obviously, it's a bit of a jarring new proposition to be audio recorded. You don't want to be having a chilling effect on patients as they're conversing with you clinically. So it's really important to have informed consent. And in fact, the CMPA just published position statement last week that's now public, where they essentially say you have to get informed consent, and just document that you've obtained that the patient understands the risks and benefits. We at AutoScribe, for instance, when you sign up, give a template consent form for first ever use that outlines all the risks and benefits, and you can modify that or make it more concise as needed, but that covers the key content that's required. So when you're evaluating an AI scribe, what are the sort of features you want to think about that in terms of deciding between different offerings? So obviously the accuracy of the AI, how fast is it? Does it personalize in terms of your preferred templates and writing style? What kind of EMR integrations? Does it have any specific customizations for medical specialties? Is it adhering to documentation standards, both professional body ones, but as well as technical ones? Is it providing any value for the patients, like a summary handout for them? And is it very verifiable that the vendor you've selected is using the data in an appropriate way? So I recommend speaking to your colleagues and reviewing these features and finding the best one for you. Languages and accents is another key consideration. AI scribes are only good as the speech recognition technology that's currently available. Due to the equity of technology that I mentioned earlier, English in the North American accent does perform the best. But it's important to think about, is it still providing value even with a weak accent? But if it's a very strong accent, it may not. So the appropriate use of AutoScribe in different contexts is important, and there's a bit of a trial and error to see with your accent or with the patient's accents, where it's being appropriately deployed and being valuable. This is a big area in terms of the challenges with the current transformers and large language models I mentioned earlier. So the biases I mentioned in terms of, basically these models have been trained on all the data on the internet, but there's a lot of imbalance and representation in that data. I like to give an example of couch surfing. How does it know couch surfing based on the context, whether that's a housing status concern or not? So there's a lot of nuance in human language that has to be accounted for, and collecting and labeling the data to rebalance the models is really the main way of doing that. And then there's the hallucinations. Hallucinations is basically the model's outputting something that's completely unrelated to what it was prompted to do originally. These are sort of defects in the model, if you will. They're rare, but this is why it's so important to have a human-in-the-loop process to review the outputs and making sure that if they do occur, they don't get into the final note, because that obviously can have clinical implications downstream. So the more robust the data is that the models are trained on, the less likely hallucinations are to occur, and also the quality of the algorithms themselves. So this is all a work in progress to minimize hallucinations, but for now they still exist. So that's why human-in-the-loop clinician review of the AI generated note is so critical. And you should think about the AI scribe vendor, how they're addressing these issues. And I think I've alluded to how we're processing with that in terms of de-identification of our data for those that do permit us to retain the data. Status of regulation. So this is a lot in flux, and public statements are coming out from key bodies like the CMPA now, and they recognize specifically it's a new technological tool, and as a result, it has its own inherent risk. But software when it's housed in the appropriate technical framework. So if it's meeting privacy and security requirements with a robust patient consent, if the servers are in Canada, the bodies have not said you cannot use them. They just said proceed with caution and do your due diligence. Right now, there's not Health Canada regulation of AI scribe technology. it's not considered software as a medical device because it's not, enacting diagnostics or therapeutic plans. And what's interesting is that, the AI scribe technology can move in that direction in the future, potentially as like a true AI assistant, providing evidence-based next steps as suggestions. So that's when it's going to become a little bit more interesting, in terms of the regulation of that technology. What's challenging for Health Canada is, though, it's used to regular software. It's just the software developed and then it's evaluated, it's approved, and it's, put in the market. But there's no like revision to the software at that point. It's just approved as it is. But with AI, as we mentioned, it's always continuously learning from new data. So how can you continuously review the accuracy and the performance? That's why Health Canada has some framework in terms of good machine learning practice. These aren't enforced regulations yet, but they're ones that they are using to eventually enable regulation of this kind of task, because it is coming, right? So stay tuned for Health Canada announcements on this. Okay, whoops. What just happened there? All right. Yeah, and so this is where it's going to be really interesting, is like post-market review of these software that has AI that's doing diagnostics and therapeutics. What does that look like? How do we work with clinicians who are using these tools to ensure they're still safe and effective when being used in real practice? Because right now we don't do that generally with software. And there's a role for advocacy here for clinicians to think about, how can Health Canada and other key institutions have the resources it needs to navigate this new world of AI assisted healthcare? Because right now it's doesn't have the resources it needs to deal with this huge wave of AI now sweeping across our industry. All right. That was me going through a lot of detailed technical information there, but love to do a demo here. Happy to take any volunteers, or have you do a quick one with Kathy. Any volunteers?
You might be stuck with me.
No problem at all. Okay. So yeah, just doesn't have to be a fancy illness or anything, but we could just do one just to show the principle of how it works. Let me show my screen here. Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, so as I mentioned, this is AutoScribe, and this is the standalone application, but we do have EMR integration with certain key EMRs, so you can actually launch it from the EMR, and then you can post the final note back. But in this case, we'll just do a quick and start, because once I clicking this microphone, it will immediately start recording conversation. So let's get going. Hi, Kathy. What brings you to clinic today?
I stubbed my toe 4 weeks ago and it's still hurting.
Oh, sorry to hear that. What did you stub your toe on?
Just a wall. I just turned and caught my foot on the wall.
Mm. And did it become bruised or swollen?
It was bruised, it was swollen, and it's still hurting today.
Okay. What did the nail look like?
The nail was not affected at all.
Okay. And did you put any ice when it happened?
No, I didn't put ice. I elevated it and I buddy taped it.
Okay. And which toe is this? The right or left toe?
The left baby.
The left, baby. Okay. Um, and in terms of range of motion of your toes, are you able to move it at all, or?
I can physically move it passively, but not independently.
Okay. And when you touch the area, like is there any numbness or does it feel okay?
It's numb at the end of the day after standing on it.
Okay. And if I press, I'm just gonna press your toe there. Is it tender when I press?
Not in that spot, no.
Okay. Okay. So 4 weeks ago was a long time. Do you have any other medical problems I should know about?
Not related to anything physical.
Okay. Don't take medications for anything? Yeah.
Just a PPI.
Okay. Um, so, based on the exam here, with limited range of motion and some numbness, I'm concerned that maybe there was a small fracture that was missed. So what I'll do is I'll send for an X-ray to see if we have one. But the buddy taping would have been the appropriate if it was a simple fracture even, but if there's a complex fracture, which basically means was like the bone is broken up into many small pieces, then there may be a different kind of intervention needed to remedy your symptoms, a procedural one. Hopefully that's not the case, but let's get the X-ray. And once we have those results, we'll know what we're dealing with. How does that sound?
Okay, that sounds wonderful. Thank you.
All right, so I've ended the encounter. I just realized this is a template that I was using for another specialist group, so I'm gonna switch it to the SOAP note one. This is the one that it would have defaulted to originally. Um, But yeah, so what's nice about our system is that, as I said, there's so many customizations. You can customize what template you prefer to have as your default, etc. Typically, when you first sign up, the SOAP note one is the automatically defaulted one. And then you can generate a patient handout. Here's the final note. So you can see it's like SOAP note subjective, objective, assessment plan. So it defaults into a bullet point one, which tends to be the comprehensive, but also in a readable, concise way. Well, I think most of the information is there. I think this one it takes said like PPI, but I think we'd have to specify which PPI. That's why I missed that one. But that's what you do. You just do a small revision of the note there. Yeah. Okay. I think the rest of the note is good. And here's the patient handout. Yeah, just go for the X-ray as I described. But if you had a complex visit with multiple issues, it's nicely segments them as well. You can imagine that saves time and from writing your own notes, and then you can switch between note templates, and you can dictate your edits, etc. And then once you're done, you can predict blood work forms. So if there was any blood work that we ordered, it could populate an MOH requisition or predict the diagnostic codes. And then this is when you can actually finalize it to copy to the clipboard in this case, so you can paste it into your EMR. Oh, that's the demo. Anybody have any questions on that?
Will it do like an admission history? Do you have a template like that too, or do family history, surgical history, and auto-populate it into their different sections?
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, we do have like sort of like the standard internal medicine admission note or discharge note and all that. So but again, we can customize it to how your system or your personal way of writing is done.
Are you aware of any hospitals that are using it, or programs where it's not just individual users subscribing, but there's more of like an institutional take up to use it?
Yeah, so we are currently working with like New Brunswick Health Authority, for instance, for deployment in their hospitals. We're working with St. Michael's Emergency Department. We're working with Sunnybrook. Yeah, we have various institutions that we're currently, many more are in the pipeline, but happy to take that offline and refer you if you'd like.
And sorry, one last question. Like, have you ever thought, or are you looking into adding where you could have the AI also then do its own auto differential to see, what the keywords are, what should be on the radar, just as sort of like a forcing strategy to see what what the diagnoses could be, or is it all just about scribing right now?
So yeah, this is exactly where we're going, is like, AI as true assistant. Right now, we just share my screen again because we do have like a lightweight version of evidence support. So this is like still clinical decision support where it's not really in the circle of care as as an advisor. So you could see here like what are the common symptoms of a missed toe fracture, how to differentiate between simple, like, and if I click this, it'll open our partner company's Hippo AI platform and give you all the evidence for that. This is like a lightweight version, but to your point, we want to go to that sort of real time, in the moments suggestion of uh, uh, items to ask or things that were missed in the history taking physical. That's where I was talking earlier about, the software as a medical device regulation process from Health Canada comes into play. That's where that gray zone is about where they're going to start enforcing that kind of stuff. So it's a very interesting field because of the continuous AI learning, which they're really not set up to do. So we're going to go in that direction, but we also don't want to upset the apple cart too much in that before the regulators are ready for that.
Thank you very much.
I have a question. At what point does the physician have time to review the saved information interview before handing over a copy to the patient?
So are you saying that like you end the encounter and your workflow is such that you immediately leave the room so you don't have time to wait the 1 minute for the handout? Is that what you're saying?
To review the contents of the handouts, barring anything like typos, with the exception of that it's correct.
Yeah, so at this point in time, we're trying to maximize speed, obviously, of when you're done the dialogue, to when you end the encounter, because when you end the encounter, you can generate the patient handout, and then it takes another 20 or 30 seconds to generate that. What we do have some clients do is they actually end the encounter when the general intake and physical is done, but they actually don't keep recording when they're doing like preparing all the paperwork, for instance, like the test requisitions or the prescriptions that they're enacting in the EMR. Like, the AI scribe doesn't need to listen to that, so you might as well have ended the encounter so that you're using the 45 seconds in parallel for waiting for the AI to be done, as well as doing all your EMR tasks.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. I'm wondering how it handles situations where there's a group of people, say a family or, several people in the room.
Yeah, so it's obviously some scenarios are better than others. Generally speaking, it captures the voices very well if people aren't talking over each other. If multiple people are talking at the same time, it can be a bit confused. If key words or phrases are part of the dialogue, so for instance, it's saying like my mom or my son Dave or whatever, like key words to say that, oh, there's like a different person in the dialogue, not just two. The AI can recognize that, and then you'll see in the note, patient's parent reports, etc., about the child. So it does quite well. I think if there's like a screaming child or more than 5 speakers in one room, it can struggle, but there's a bit of trial and error with that.
Okay. And the other thing, I'm still trying to get my head around the sort of privacy issues and data collection issues. Like, I'm curious how you got the data to develop this, and what happens, like how does patient data get handled in this context so that privacy is maintained?
Yeah, so well, when we first started this project, you know, way back, we actually bought a data set of patient-clinician dialogue tied to the final note and the codes that were in there. That was you know, going through a process where this kind of data was being permitted to be used in that way from in the US. So it was a US-based data set. Over time, we've leveraged that with the consent process that I mentioned earlier. So between patients providing consent about what's happening with the data, as well as the de-identification. So basically, we remove all direct identifiers from the data before we add it to the data set that trains the AI. That has helped it get approval in terms of the process there. However, different organizations have different privacy thresholds. So that's why we have this AutoScribe Express, which I mentioned. We as soon as the clinician has done their edits, we delete all data. But in that case, the AI won't learn from the edits that the clinician makes.
And so are all the audio recordings stored in a de-identified format?
No, so okay, I should specify, we retain the text data. We do not retain the audio data.
Okay, so that's like immediately deleted or?
Yes, so with AutoScribe Express, it's currently deleted at 28 days. Even if you aren't done your edit, if you're not finalized your notes, sorry, 2 days for AutoScribe Express and 28 days for standard AutoScribe, where we do retain the de-identified data. And that's just to give time to finalize the notes. But and that's we're actually planning to make that configurable, right? So if you want it to be finalized as soon as you submit to the EMR, even if there's, you know, chance you might want to revise, then we'll be able to enable that.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else with questions?
I'll just share my last slide just so in case anybody wants to reach out to me here. This is my researcher email, noah.crampton@mail.utoronto.ca, because this talk was sort of positioned as, you know, my work is in AI applied to medicine and how that was initiated, the context, and then the spinoff that occurred from that. So feel free to send me an email there, and then if you're interested in the research part, great. If not, I can connect you with our team for the actual AutoScribe application. Thank you so much, everyone, and thanks, Kathy.
Thank you so much. That's kind of mind-blowing. Thanks for sharing today.
I think we should also have Dr. AI.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, everyone should have one. Thank you
Thank you.
for an excellent presentation.
Not seeing any further questions coming forward. So thank you very much, Dr. Crampton, for coming and presenting to our team today. I certainly learned a lot, and I think everybody else did as well. So thank you very, very much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. Okay, have a good day, everyone.
Right.